so I'm here to talk about three things, and I'll be relatively brief. One of them is to talk about a relationship that has just started between IDFA and the place I work, MIT, or Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Second is to just talk a little bit about some of the issues that are emerging from the world that I and my colleagues inhabit in terms of this shift, this new emergence in nonfiction. And third is to talk about an installation that we have opening next door that tries to show the kind of stuff we do. So maybe just to start with this is a screen capture from the Open Documentary Lab from the department I work in, which is called Comparative Media Studies, CMS. So it's an academic operation, but it's at MIT. And if you know about MIT, you'll know it's very much about technology, very committed to trying to construct, or they would say invent, I would say construct the future. So we have a lot of technologists, but we also have a lot of people that think pretty critically about technology. The motto of the university is mens et manus, mind and hand, thinking and doing. And so we really try to do that a lot. In the case of documentary, why we're working with IDFA is probably something you can already see from the people that have spoken here today. What's happening now in interactive documentary is not something that's limited to a small group of interactive project makers. It's not even just limited to technologists who work with those people with ideas and content. It's actually a much bigger ecosystem. And for this to really move in the world, it needs things like festivals where you can sort of see what's out there and assess, get a sense of the spectrum and sort of pick your favorites and decide where things are going to go. You need funders, people that are willing to give money to these kind of projects. Right now, in many countries, if you say you want money for a documentary, that cuts out. The assumption is that's linear form. It's hard to get money for some of these projects. You've got to call these new media art, but then sometimes the content is too serious for new media art. So we need to work with funders to help them understand what's happening. And we need to work with critics and with scholars in the university to develop language, concepts, to help us really understand what it is that we're up against. So it's in that sense that working together with IDFA is really important. It's useful for IDFA, I think, in the same way they work with lots of other folks, but it's really important to us because our main mission is we see ourselves as a platform, as a place where we can bring people from very different worlds together, funders, technologists, makers, critics, and engage in conversation and really push this thing off the ground. So what you see up there is kind of typical of what we do. We do a lot of production. Okay, second topic. We know about this, right? The means of production have shifted. Technologies for, let's say, high-definition video production 10 years ago were really restricted and quite expensive. They're pervasive now, pervasive in our populations, and not just in the developed West. This stuff is spreading, and it's spreading very quickly. And it means that there are a new set of voices out there with stories to tell, with experiences to share, and we need to find ways to make use of those. If you think about the tool sets that are increasingly available through folks like Mozilla or Ziga, things like Vojo or Vozmob, lots of new technologies are out there, lots of new tools are out there that enable very simple manipulation of this material, but very effective manipulation. It allows people to go from having experiences to telling stories about those experiences. So the dynamic is changing a bit. We see this across the spectrum in media, of course. The question is how to make good use of it. How to encourage better storytelling as opposed to worse storytelling or no storytelling at all. We know, we can see with kids culture already, that's the Barbie video doll. That's a way for kids who play with Barbie to make, not only to shoot material, the jewel in her neck is the lens, behind her hoodie is the screen, and the software packet is incredible. It's very easy for 7-year-olds to work with and makes potentially elegant stuff. Legos is doing the same business. So the point is we have a cultural shift. Not only can people take this stuff, but they can do things with it and they can share it. And we've got to figure out as documentary makers what that means. And what that means, I think, is something we can. Hugues talked a lot about the roots of this movement in Canada, and indeed Rouge picked it up and it came to the States. And in fact, MIT was pretty central here, with Ricky Leacock and Penny Baker and Ed Pincus. There were a lot of this activity also happened at MIT because of the technology. But this is a great example where a change in technology enables a change in the understanding of the filmmaker-subject relationship. That changed a lot thanks to this new technology. It enabled a new style of documentary. It enabled new access to new kinds of realities. And best of all, it opened up a new market. The television market for documentary is, in a certain way, what came out of this. When established 35 millimeter filmmakers saw this stuff back in 1960, they shrugged their shoulders, they ridiculed it. This stuff was seen as amateurish. It was bad form. These were people who didn't know what they were doing. And yet, it's thanks to these guys that a whole new breath of life was breathed into the documentary movement. It was a redefinition, but also a new market opportunity. So it's a thing we need to think about today as well. So I want to move to one other thing to say here. We can see in general that our culture is shifting from a one-to-one or one-to-many kind of media-centric culture, cinema, television, things that fairly stable content control, fairly stable messages, to something with network culture that's quite dynamic and not necessarily predictable. But what this brings with it is profound in terms of the categories we tend to work with. Things like texts. We've always assumed that the text is something stable, something we can craft, we can edit, we can refine, and put out there in the world. And now the world is tampering with that, can change that. Certainly in these interactive documentaries, the participants have something to do with that text. It's a collaboration. And The Exquisite Force is a wonderful example of this next point. This can be read as a horrible threat to authors. Authors like control. Most filmmakers I know are skilled at what they do. They're wonderful storytellers, but they like to control the narrative universe. And this is about not handing it over, but it's about collaboration. And as Hugues said, collaboration is a very delicate process. It's not one or the other. There's something in between. And we need to work on that and find best methods of developing it. And finally, the audiences that are seen as a revenue source or eyeballs to monetize or people to appreciate actually can do much more and be much more. So anyway, these are the sets of questions that we look a lot at. How can we think about this dynamic landscape with concepts that seem to be just truths in our lives? And I have a talk coming tomorrow, and I'll certainly go more into this kind of thing. Third thing, final thing I want to talk about, if you go into the next room, you'll see this is a collaborative project that we did with IDFA's Doc Lab and the wonderful people at Uppion who did the design work. They're really a pleasure to work with. It's a project called Moments of Innovation, and it tries to take a lot of the, I don't know if maybe at the top of the screen you'll see the concepts. Concepts that are buzz phrases today. I mean, we have a habit in our lives of kind of looking ahead. We look towards the future to be in front of us, and we want the next big thing. But it seems to me that, and maybe it's just a question of metaphors, but we kind of have to know where we're coming from to know what direction we're going in. Just moving ahead doesn't tell you much. You need more information, and the past is a great anchor. And what this project tries to do is really take these concepts and look at their previous instances, a number of them. I mean, there's a lot. We just picked some. But to try to say that what's happening today is, it's new, of course, but it's articulating really long-term desires that technology after technology, people have tried to put to use. If you think of something like data viz, we're interested in how can data visualization tell a story? Not just how can we visualize data, but how can we do it in a compelling way, in a way that brings with it elements of story, or in a way that lets us rethink what a story is. And if you get a chance to look, I mean, this thing brings tears to my eyes, and it's, I don't know, maybe says something about me, but it's, what a harrowing tale of Napoleon's troops going into Russia, beige, coming back black, tracked against temperature. I mean, that's a story. So the point here is not to just say, oh, there's nothing new and everything's been done before. That's not the message. The message here is that what's wonderful about the new is that it allows us to look back on the old and see things we never noticed before and to then understand those experiences and work from those experiences, in fact, to rethink and to be more critical about what we're doing in the present. So it's out there in the next room. Take a look. It's also online if you want to take a look there. And we're open. We'd really love to get your suggestions of other projects to include. And with that, I will stop.